Sound check. Okay, thank you everyone for joining us on our tour. Our next item is 5A, executive session for personnel.
I move to go into executive session for 30 minutes to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel in order to protect the privacy interest of the individuals to be discussed, and to return to this room at 7 o'clock.
Second.
Motion passes 7-0. I make a motion to return to regular session.
Second.
Motion passes 7-0.
Our next item is 5C, executive session, consult with an attorney.
I move to enter into executive session for 15 minutes for the exception for matters which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship under the Kansas Open Meetings Act, and that we return to open session in this room at 7:16 p.m. Superintendent Dr. Allison Harder and Attorney Tammy Samoji are invited to join the board for this session.
Second. Motion passes 7-0. Second. Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, the next item is the consent agenda. The items listed on the consent agenda are considered by the Board of Education to be routine business items. Approval of the items may be made by a single motion, second, and majority vote with no separate discussion of any items listed. Should a member of the board desire to discuss any item at his or her request, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. What are the wishes of the board?
I move to adopt the consent agenda as presented. Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you, Casey. The board would also like to recognize and sincerely thank Dr. Harder for her 28 years of dedicated service to Emporia Public Schools and congratulates her on over 30 years of commitment to public education. We are proud of the work accomplished under her leadership and wish her all the best in her retirement.
Thank you. Thanks. Aw. No, yes. Thank you. Thank you. I'm still here till June 30th. So.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item 8A, how the brain shapes behavior.
Jennifer Casey, our behavior specialist for the district, is here to provide a little professional development. And Mrs. Casey is feeling a little under the weather, so we especially thank her for being here tonight.
Yes, of course. Can you hear me pretty well? Okay. Well, I'll let you pull up the presentation. So I wanted to provide some information on how the brain impacts emotional well-being, patterns of stress, and our responses to those patterns of stress as far as behavior. So today we're going to talk about how the brain influences thoughts, emotions, and actions. We'll identify different levels of stress and how they affect brain and the function of the brain. We'll understand fight, flight, and freeze reactions and how they shape behavior. We'll examine the power of relationships and how those relationships can actually change the shape and genetic code of the brain, and then we'll understand how educators can rewire the brain through strategies. So when we're thinking about the brain and behavior connection, all of our thoughts, emotions, and actions are shaped by how the brain develops and processes information. And these experiences occur when the brain is formed from the bottom up and the inside out. And when I'm working with school teams, I'm focusing on 4 main areas of the brain for understanding student needs and interventions. So in the brainstem, that's our basic biological functions. That's our sleep, our hunger, thirst, basic bodily needs like being able to shower, those types of things. The midbrain is where the motor system is located, and so when we see kids completely shut down or withdraw or go into aggressive type behaviors, they're usually in their midbrain area. And the limbic system is the emotional control center of the brain. So we know that if a student is having lots of crying or lots of guilt or lots of big emotions, they're in the limbic system. And then the frontal lobe is the part of the brain that is responsible for learning new material, problem solving, reasoning through different problems, those types of things. And so knowing that information helps our teams understand where our kids may be in their brain state. So the foundation of all processes in the brain is from the neuron. And so that picture there with the white that kind of looks like branches is the neuron itself. And this is what is responsible for transmitting information throughout the brain and the nervous system, and what is responsible for how we react to stressors that are introduced to the brain. And these connections overall, the different branches, are called neural pathways. So when we go into a survival response, our brain will detect a threat without us unconsciously thinking about it. So if you think about it, if you're just walking in the woods and then all of a sudden you see a tiger out of nowhere, that's going to create a level of stress, right? Especially in Kansas, we wouldn't usually think of a tiger. But when we think of that, we usually either go into fight, we're going to find some type of item to try to fight the tiger off, we're going to run or try to avoid the situation. We may freeze out of terror and just completely shut down. We might start gathering resources all around us to try to protect ourselves. And then fawn is the action of just passing out. So the brain just goes into survival, and the only way it knows how to survive is just to shut everything down. So you'll see passing out there. And when this happens for children that are coming to our schools, if they've had traumatic experiences or chronic or toxic stress, they may be in these survival responses on any given day at any given time. And so one stressor is all it takes to create a domino type reaction to send them from a calm state into potentially an aggressive state or a flight state. So we know that childhood stress affects development, and we know that this impacts emotional regulation and behavior greatly. The common stressors are abuse, neglect, caregiver mental illness, caregiver incarceration, insecurity about basic needs, and prolonged or harmful stress that can keep the body's survival response active. One of the key things here is that we used to think that children that were able to kind of process what was happening as far as the stressors that were happening around them were more affected by it, but they're now showing that infants are actually, their brains are more impaired. So they can just be laying in the crib and hearing it and not necessarily visualizing it or those types of things. And their brain is actually going to have more of a stress response than maybe a kid that's 7, 8, 12 years old. So these images come from the Harvard Developing Child Study, and on the right side you can see that there's not as much activity going on as far as what is lit up. And when we think back to the first slide and I talked about the brainstem, that's actually kind of that fork at the bottom of the brain there that's lit up red. So that child is living in a state of survival, and they are probably trying to get their basic needs met, so sleep, hunger, knowing when their next meal is going to come, those kinds of things. And the child on the right is a typically developing brain. So this child has had nurturing caregivers, hasn't had all those adverse responses or stressors, and is able, you can see the front part is all red. They're able to think and learn adequately given new information. So we know that stable relationships and routines can create the safety that kids need, and we heard about this a lot during COVID, where schools were the safe places for kids. The routines that we have in schools and the relationships that we build at schools are so important for helping kids be successful. And so we know that when we create predictability, like you'll see in that picture where the students line up and they do you want a fist bump, a high five, or a hug in the morning? That's a way to do a quick relationship connection point, and it also is predictability, so those students are going to know that need is met every day that they come in. We also know that caring and supportive adults can help regulate stress, improve emotional control, and build resilience for kids. It only takes one adult in a child's life to change how the brain is wired and to change their genetic code and the genetic code of their offspring for many years to come. So when we're talking about capturing kids' hearts and those kinds of initiatives that are built on the foundation of relationships, that's why this is so important. So all behavior tells a story, and generally the actions that are communicated, children can't put into words. So when I'm working with teams and they're struggling to understand why a child may be shutting down or may have aggression or maybe trying to escape the classroom, I'm staying curious about that behavior, and I'm helping them to stay curious as well and figure out what they're trying to communicate through those actions, because all of it is communication. We just really have to stay curious to understand the message that they're trying to send us. And then these are just different strategies. I've been working with teams around the district on these strategies and how we can start implementing them for our kids that may be struggling. And so we've really focused on breathing. Breathing is a built-in tool. You don't need any extra tools to go along with it. You will always have it with you. And so that's one of the go-tos that I try to work with kids on, is how to control their breath. If they can control their breath, they can control their stress. And if they can control their stress, then they can control the reactions of their nervous system. We also know that breathing triggers a relaxation response, so it slows down the heart rate, which can activate the parasympathetic nervous system response, which causes a calming effect. And then movement. Movement is a natural stress reliever. So kids get this sometimes during PE or recess, but we know that our kids that are struggling with this stress response, they need more movement than maybe the typical peer. We also talk about intentional short breaks that will help them reset their emotions. So we use connection strategies during these breaks. We may also use sensory strategies and some of the breathing tools that may be built in. And then social connection is that big one. So the hug, the fist bump, the thumbs up, or time with a trusted adult. There's a lot of times I'll be working with kids and I'll say, who's your go-to person at school? And they'll be able to identify that person. And when we're able to give them more time with that person, we start to see an increase in positive behaviors because that need is being met. So that's really very cool that we're seeing that here in our district. And then these are the references. What questions can I answer?
Questions do we have?
I don't have any questions, but this is so fascinating. I want to learn more about this because this is really, really helpful, so thank you.
Yeah, of course. Happy to share. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you.
Yeah,
Great job.
thank you. Great
Really
job.
good info.
Item 8B is the 2025-2026 Capturing Kids' Hearts training.
Okay. Mrs. Judy Stanley, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching, Learning, and Student Services, will present this agenda item.
All right, Casey, you can go back to the other one. It's a lot easier to read. It's essentially the same thing. So this is our proposal for next year, our training, so that we can keep the momentum going with Capturing Kids' Heart. The very first one that you see is our leadership. Thank you. Our leadership blueprint training. And this is for administrators, directors, and assistant directors. There are a few of us, probably the number of fingers on my hand, that went through this many years ago. And so we felt like it's time to bring this back. This way our current leaders also have that leadership piece, and it's really just the CKH training for leaders. We also have the winning culture. This would be CKH training for you all as you have your board retreat. The traction visits, this is when our strategist comes. She spends about a half a day in each one of the buildings, and we walk around with the principals. We spend time with process champions. We go into a lot of classrooms just to see how things are going, to talk about how to grow it, answer any questions anybody has, and talk about just what their next steps are. The district and campus premium, that is actually the digital site that we all have access to. It has grown exponentially since we got it when we came on board as elementary schools. There are resources for their Engage activities, there are launches, there are lessons like SEL lessons. There's a trait for every month. This month for February, it's kindness. Imagine that, Valentine's Day. But there's all kinds of activities linked in it. There are different levels. There's a level for the teacher, the level for the building principals, and the level for the district level. So we all have our own pieces to it. CKH is constantly adding to it and adapting it. So that's really kind of the core resource that comes out of CKH. And that should not say ESSER funds. Obviously, I used the same table as last year. That would actually be professional development expenses. So that would come out of our professional development line. And then the last piece would be our Capturing Kids Heart 1. That is what we do with our new teachers every July. And that comes out of Title IIA. And we can do that because we've always purchased that out of Title IIA. There's some restrictions on Title II. What questions do you have for me?
I'm a huge fan of Capturing Kids Heart. I do have a question, and this is really directed at my fellow board members. I know that we love this program, and we are excited to learn more. But given that we'll have a new superintendent in July, I just wonder if our board retreat time might be better spent with a new superintendent, as opposed to Capturing Kids Heart.
Yeah, I would love to do Capturing Kids' Hearts training as a board at some point, but I don't know that this is our best fit. But again, since Chuck's sitting right there, we are 100% committed to Capturing Kids' Hearts, and we know how very important and the great things it's doing in our district, so I just don't want people to think we don't care.
Right.
It's just not, like you said, I don't think for our board retreat that will work this summer.
Those aren't all the trainings that Capturing Kids Heart does. Like last year we did the recharge and they had the CKH2, and we've talked about those are things we want to bring back, but you have to do on a rotation basis. So it is something that for next year maybe you would want to consider, since there are some changes happening this year.
Right. Yeah, I tend to agree, especially as we know that we're bringing in new staff, new administrators, and things like that, that looking into what the 25-26 school year holds for us, maybe we could not do this training right now, but keep it on the burner for a later time once we are settled with new leadership.
Agreed. I think it's about, our time is valuable and so is Capturing Kids' Hearts, but if we have a new superintendent at that time, I'd want to prioritize that time to build that relationship and make sure we all flow together.
Doesn't affect any of our other contract fees, right? Like it
Nope.
wasn't a negotiated based on that, right?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. They always give me one big proposal, and then I'm like, okay, take that off, because we can't do it all. And no, it doesn't change any of the other costs.
Okay. Other thoughts on CKH training? Okay. So the motion does need to be amended a little bit.
Yeah, I'll make the motion. I move to approve the Capturing Kids' Hearts 25-26 training proposal as submitted with the amendment that we remove the Capturing Kids' Hearts Winning Culture Board retreat in consideration of our other issues.
Second.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you to everyone that has been working so hard on Capturing Kids' Hearts training. It's always great to see our schools be recognized nationally for the work that they are doing, especially now that we learned from Jennifer Casey earlier and really got to make some of those other connections with Capturing Kids' Hearts. We're excited to do this for another year.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, item 9A is the update on Mary Herbert Building.
Corey Nicolette is back to talk about the tour that we talked about and then add any other details.
So just a quick recap, it was about almost 15 years ago that we did do some foundation work on this building. Since then, a lot of the stuff that you've seen that's damaged today was redone, and you've seen we didn't make it very long before we've got more sinking with the building. We've had it measured a year apart, almost within a couple weeks of actually a year apart, and we saw movement in all the areas that are a problem. So we have no reason to expect that that's done. Everything points to it's going to continue to increase in the size of the problem that we're going to have to deal with as time goes on. So I can answer any questions that you have. Everybody got a copy of the book that has the pictures. I think everybody got to see everything in person. It's probably better than the pictures anyway, though. So if there's any questions, I can take those.
Questions? Go ahead, Leslie.
No, just eye-opening. I mean, you hear about it and you walk through but until you point out all the things, like you said earlier, that you can't unsee, I I definitely won't see a lot of things today.
You know, we've talked about Mary Herbert for a while now, sometimes in board meetings, sometimes just generally when we're visiting with staff, and there's a lot going on in the building. I knew some parts of it were beat up and kind of, you know, slanted. But when you're going through it day to day, when you're not actually trying to pay attention to that, you don't really see it the way you see it when, okay, I'm actually just looking at this door frame, the light's off, and I mean, there was one door upstairs, the frame literally looked like something from Beetlejuice. It was just so squished together, it wasn't right. I'm just kind of the mind that I think this building is steadily, you know, decaying and rotting, basically, and we're going to have to find a new building for a new solution for where we put our administrative staff at. I don't think this is worth putting any money in a repair or fix.
I think the big thing on the money is it's expensive to fix it for the problem. You know, we're looking at that 400,000, 500,000, whatever it is, which is kind of an unknown because until you lift it, you don't know what you're getting. But everything you saw today also is going to have to be done. And I don't think we can do that for what's reasonable cost-wise, considering the unknowns that we're committing to on the front end. There's no price tag on it. It's going to have to kind of be not an open checkbook, but it's going to have to be a very fluid checkbook as we keep going through this process.
I have a question. Will the pictures that we were given tonight of the things that we saw be made available to the public?
I believe they're
those
on the
gonna-
board docs already.
Okay, they're on board doc, okay. It'd be great if we could get word out that those are there, because I've mentioned to my fellow board members, I feel like if people just attended meetings here, I look around and I go, how blessed are we to have such a nice room, you know? And it speaks well of all of our staff because the building is so clean and shiny, you know? And you mentioned they've done such a good job, patch, 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 paint, 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 you know? And it makes, okay, it doesn't look that bad. But when you really look at it, there are things that don't just aesthetically look bad. It's like, that kind of looks like it could fall off the wall, out of the wall, you know? And it becomes a safety matter. And I think it's important. We're supposed to be good stewards of taxpayer funds and all of that. You know, I think it's important that people understand this isn't like, oh, we want a prettier place to work, you know, that it is a matter of safety. And I'm not sure everybody knows that this building is 100 years old-ish, so.
It's a little over 100 years old.
Yeah, I think that's important that people know. We've done the best we can with it for a long time, but it might, like Jeremy said, there comes a point where you can't do much more, and it's not fiscally responsible to try to do much more with it. So, but thank you. The pictures, everything, and showing us very, very helpful.
And we can work on an article or something, working with Lindell on how to continue to publicize that, because unless you're looking at board docs and you're looking for that, you wouldn't know. So we can continue to work on that.
Well, I think, like Jeremy said, the big thing is you can walk through the halls and you don't see any of this. Now, you do feel the floor. I think when you go up the ramp, everybody feels that. But beyond that, you don't see a lot of this stuff. And people aren't going to be in and out of some of these rooms where these problems are the most prevalent, because that's just not what they're here for. So, you know, the problem is people aren't here to look at walls. They're here to look at what they're doing and take care of the business they're here for.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Corey. Thank you for taking the time to walk us around earlier and put all the pictures together. We really appreciate it.
Sure.
Thank you. Okay. Item 9B is the first offer for Kansas Avenue building. And just pointing out for everyone that we do have 2 offers to discuss for Kansas Avenue this evening.
We have Mrs. Pam Stranathan, Assistant Superintendent of Business Operations. She will provide an overview of both. We'll go first this agenda item and then the next one. And then Matt Johnson from Keller Williams Realty is here to also provide some additional details.
So I'm not into real estate, but for some reason, Matt and I have been tag teaming, right? Because if they don't call him, they call me. And so we've kind of worked together. He's worked a little bit more on the first one with communication, and then I've worked a little bit more on the second one. So the first one that we're looking at is for $1. And I will let Matt share if there's any updates, because he had communication there with the individual. So I'll let you share a little bit on the $1. Sure.
Yeah, and that's one of the drawbacks of a public-facing entity is they will sometimes step to the side of the agent whose name is listed, and they will try to contact somebody directly. So there is some of that. Speaking with this individual, he bases his offers off of a more of a shotgun approach, and it's all numbers based. Speaking with him, he may make as few as 10 offers a month, maybe as many as 20, and just to see what sticks. And with this, they try to get it as inexpensive as possible, and they go in and rehab for what he referred to as moderate income housing, asking him for specifics on what that would be. He did not get into specifics of what that could potentially be.
So, and I apologize if I'm going to ask you to repeat something that you've already said because I was reading some of these documents. And so if I missed something, not trying not to pay attention. They want to purchase it for $1, and they won't tell us what type of housing it'll be. It sounds kind of like a ridiculous offer. Here's kind of my first thought. Like, I'm not opposed to selling the property to become housing. We have a housing issue, not just in Emporia, but all around. But I kind of want to know what type of housing is going to go in there because, you know, me and my significant other make a lot of money, but the type of house I can afford is not the type of house that people who work at Hostess and Hopkins can afford. And I need housing that people who work at Hostess and Hopkins can afford, not a lawyer and a nuclear power plant operator. And when you're looking at potentially purchasing the property, and it sounds like it's going to be a for-profit commercial use, right? I'm going to build it and I'm going to sell it and make money off of it.
Correct.
It sounds like we're kind of getting the bum end of a deal. And I actually feel this about the next item on the agenda. It does not feel like a serious offer, and I'm not interested. What do you all think?
Yeah, I think with the $1, if you're going to do that and want us to seriously consider it, I think we deserve details on, again, what demographic would be able to afford this, because that would just make a huge difference in how I felt about it and whether we do take it seriously. The refusal to give details on that feels very shady to me. So, and I don't feel like it would be responsible of us to go, oh, we trust you, vote yes. So.
And just to clarify, I'm not opposed to like selling it to someone who's going to make money off of it. But if we have the property, let's make sure it's actually we have a little control over what it can be used for in a way that can benefit the community.
Sure.
Right. Agreed.
Well, and just to add a little bit to that, with speaking with him as well, what he does, he makes offers on schools, hospitals, nursing homes that have been shut down, closed down, and he makes, I won't say a ridiculous offer like Jeremy said, but a lowball offer to essentially get it off that entity's books. That's his group's goal. Now, whether he makes it studio, one-bedroom, apartments, those details were not shared.
Okay. Jamie, did you want to? Okay, go ahead if we're ready. Any other thoughts on this offer? Okay.
Based on what I'm hearing from my colleagues, I move to reject the proposed offer for the Kansas Avenue building as submitted.
Second.
Okay, we'll be ready for the second offer.
Okay, so I put a lot of the key stuff in
Hold
the.
on a sec.
Whoops,
Hold
sorry.
on. Sorry, waiting on a couple votes.
Oh, sorry.
Motion passes 7-0.
Okay, so on the next one, I put a lot of the details in here. This is the Brownsfield one in reference to where we had Deanna Pearson. And also, just to cover this, is in the document, in this commercial real estate sales contract in the back, she had requested through COMA that her information not be in here, which this does not fall under COMA. So it would go public, and we did notify her, Matt did, of that. And she was given the option to pull this off or to continue with it on, and she opted to continue on. So if anybody asks any questions about that. But this is in reference to of taking the property and wanting to try to get grants and other entities in the community to participate in this. The key to it is the Brownsfield, we would need to do an environmental study with it. And then when you look through the documents and look at that, then it pulls into if there's problems with it. Sometimes there's a 50-50 split of, correcting if there's any issues or anything along that line. And so she's offering $75,000, but contingent with all of the things that are in here with the city coming up with some grants. I know she had touched base with the university. There's no concrete money grant-wise with that yet as with the property, but she would offer the $75,000 with also the contingent to pull back out of that if the funding did not approve. It would put us into November as a closing date, which would be after the environmental study. And one of the points that Matt made is once we did an environmental study, which we do not have to do on the property, then we would have to disclose that to any buyers moving forward with that information on there. So I did contact, because it's KDHE, and asked some questions about that in reference to, and a lot of times, the document you'll see in there, it's for spaces, you can see where they converted like fields that are just kind of not selling and stuff into baseball fields, or they've done stuff with those to convert. She did put in there that she's wanting to make it for more of a, like spaces where people can come in and do art stuff and have studios and things in there to convert that property over to that. But once again, it's still based off of all the funding from the city sponsoring it. We would have to put it on the historic registry, and that takes a little while to get that put through. So any questions on that? I can answer as much as I know about it, and if Matt has anything, else to add on that.
I do have a question, because I think the November 3rd closing date sort of, is far out. And so I kind of worry about taking the property off the market for that long and then possibly, no grant funding coming through, and we wouldn't be able, we'd have to start from scratch, basically. So I think one of my first questions, just as I think about that, and if you could refresh my memory, have we already gone to the state legislature about our ability to sell this? Okay, because I know that could take a while, so if we don't have that barrier, that's, we'll wait until my decision too.
And one of the things that you brought up, Jamie, was that, Matt, and we kind of talked about that because, like a contingency on a house, you could do something like that, which is in the documentation, but I still think it ties, like you said, it ties that property up to where it would be pretty much till after November, to where if somebody came in, even with a cash offer, but still, I think we're still really early in the property being out on the market. And Matt has been sharing weekly with Alice and I where there is, people are looking at it and asking questions about it. So it's not like it's just sitting there and nobody's asking or wanting to know about it or not having contact on it. And Matt had just showed last night, correct? So its interest is there. I think this is really early to bail, I guess you'd say, on it. So that's just my thoughts.
I have some thoughts about this, and I kind of gave a little bit of a prelude when I spoke earlier. This seems kind of like a pie-in-the-sky idea for a purchase of property. I've just kind of some concerns about, the feasibility and the seriousness of it, because on one hand, we're talking about being some sort of an artistic building. It doesn't seem like this is a board or a nonprofit that's organized beyond one individual. And this is contingent on grant funding, which I'm not opposed to because I believe we sold Maynard and we extended it several times. We gave that group a lot of grace to make sure that what they were pulling off could come through. So I'm not opposed to something being contingent on that. But the CDBG grant is what it's called, isn't necessarily a guarantee, right, that you're going to get it. This seems like one person as opposed to the people who were buying Maynard, which was a coalition of people who were really professional. Also, I have a question about the CDBG grant because of the freeze on various federal funding. Whether or not those funds are there to be dispersed. Are they sitting in state coffers and they can be released, or are they tied up? Southwick House is another board I'm on, and we had that issue. Our funding, we were able to verify, was basically in state coffers. It was not tied up in any federal freeze. But I feel like that's information I need to know. Another thing I'd point out is that, we talk, like, this idea is just kind of all over the place. On the one hand, it's sort of like an art-located nonprofit, and now there's like also this reference to possible manufacturing in it. Smith River Forge, Bumblebee Boxes, a bunch of companies are listed, but what I don't have is any viability that your plan actually, this isn't just something that you identified online. Have you talked to these people? Are they selling? If you purchase the property for $75,000, how are you buying a manufacturing business? How are they coming in? It just doesn't have much more there. I also decided just to Google this person, this owner, just because, who is this? Is it someone in the community? And if you go to the Junction City Post from Junction City, Kansas, there was kind of an identical proposal to their city commission for a community development block grant that also involved bringing manufacturing to town. A 500-page presentation. By all accounts, it doesn't appear that they took the bait. They did not seem interested, kind of had some of the concerns I'm voicing. But one thing that news article did mention that I, would also want some information about is if you're moving manufacturing to this place, does it require a zoning change? Because then your thing isn't going to happen unless you get a zoning change approved, dependent upon what that zoning is in that area. I'm not saying no. I'm just saying, I need some more information. And because apparently I'm on a roll tonight, the proposal that was written out and submitted with it did not read professionally to me. It had a lot of typos. It was kind of all over the place. At one point, it said that the startup phase of this project is considered high risk. It doesn't seem serious.
Other thoughts?
Jeremy pretty much summed it up. Yeah, I'm not comfortable with waiting till November. If ideally, I don't know that it will happen, but I would want to try to commit to something that closes within this fiscal year. So I'm not on board.
So this may be more of a question for Matt. What, being a contract like this, do we have to accept or deny or wait, or what's our obligation on that?
For this offer in particular,
Yeah.
you can accept it, reject it, or make a counter. You're under no obligation.
If we do nothing, that's not one of your options. I mean,
If you do nothing, you're essentially rejecting it.
okay.
There's a time, like we have to respond within a certain amount of time after
That
they
was on the first offer.
Okay,
Oh, not on this one.
not on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, I really am struggling with this one. I mean, 75,000, I would love to see a project like this, like, take off in our community. I just think for me, waiting 6 months is too long.
I would tend to agree. When I was reading about the project, I was like, this sounds really great. It sounds like something that our community would really buy into, and that would be a benefit, especially in that neighborhood. So that was really exciting. And then the more I thought, really to Jeremy's point, was logistically, we could all think of a lot of really great ideas that would benefit the community, but that doesn't mean they're going to be able to come to fruition. And I'm hesitant to jump on board to an idea that is contingent upon other organizations getting grant funds together and, the reference to the city needing to work on a grant, and this is like a whole moving parts partnership that seems like not something I'm excited about jumping on for right now, even though I think the ideas, the use of this space is really enticing to me.
And to be fair to this individual, I think, just through Southwick House and what I know from the CBDG grant, I think it's more of a pass-through grant, so it's sort of like released to the city and then passes through you, so I don't know that it takes so much of the city's cooperation to do it. But for me to take this seriously, I need a lot more information.
Okay.
I motion, unless somebody else wants to speak up, I motion to reject the proposed offer for the Kansas Avenue building as submitted.
I was gonna, if this motion would pass, they could come back and make a offer in the future that,
Absolutely.
if it's, would happen to be that way.
And I'm not opposed to that either. Yeah.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you,
all.
Matt.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is 10A, board reports. It looks like the technical college board met. Leslie?
Yes, we did. We barely had a quorum. People were ill, so we didn't have a program highlight. It was just kind of a, like one of our business meetings, you know, just a normal old meeting, nothing too exciting to report.
Leslie? Next item is 10B, superintendent search agreement. I can talk for a second about this, and then I'll let Casey share as well. There are a few organizations that can assist us in searching for a new superintendent. KSB is who the district has used previously, and Casey has a sample timeline and sample agreement from them should we decide to use them again in this search. But this is really, this item is connected to 10C in a way where we just need to make a decision on if we would like KSB to help us with the search, if not, whom, and then that's the agreement of the cost and what all they would do as part of the search. Oh, I got a thumbs up from Casey.
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, she did exactly what they're going to do. They're going to do the screening. They kind of help on the backside of everything, walk you through the entire from beginning to end, which will go really quickly. So if you want to use KASB, we would sign the contract or the agreement tonight.
And I see no reason not to go with KESB. They know our district well. We know them. We work well with them. We know their search consultants. So I feel like we have a really good relationship with them, and I feel like they would serve us well.
And having been here when Dr. Harder was hired, KASB did a great job. They were very attentive. I remember them coming. I think we had, I believe they may have been executive sessions, but, where we would visit with them and review the pool of candidates and talk about, issues that we were able to. Did a really good job. So there's no reason not to use them. And they're going to have the widest net of all of the potential organizations we could use to orchestrate a superintendent search.
I would just add that I was happy to see that there is a survey that'll go out to the community so we can get input from the community on the qualities that they're looking for in the next superintendent.
That's one thing I would piggyback off of is the survey. There would be focus groups. There would be a, what did they call it? Screening committee. There's many different steps to it that everybody would have an input.
Mm-hmm. Also, I liked that they will offer both the survey and the focus groups with a Spanish option as well.
Okay. I move to approve the superintendent search agreement through Kansas Association of School Boards as submitted.
Second.
Motion passes 7-0.
Then the next item is the superintendent search timeline. So there are two options of a timeline. One is, well, they both will start really this week. Marketing materials will be going out. They'll be putting marketing materials together. And then there's the online survey that's open, that's open, and then focus groups and things like that. So there's, if you have the document open, two options, one that starts on the 18th and one that starts on the 26th, or then there's another meeting in March. You can see the dates there. So it just depends, starting next week or week after next. Casey, anything to add?
Nope, you're exactly right. We just need to choose those dates.
Okay, so option A, starting next week, option B, starting the week after.
The highlighting, but like I don't have two motions. It just says
Right.
as submitted. Is there something I'm missing?
No, it's okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold
Okay.
on, Leslie,
Sorry.
let me clarify because, okay, so option one, the community survey would be February 18th through the 24th. Option two, the community survey is February 25th through March 5th.
Okay.
So we're really just deciding when we want the survey to go out.
Okay,
Is that right,
okay.
Jamie?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
And my preference would be sooner rather than later.
I second that. I think the sooner we get started, the better.
And the
Okay.
sooner one would allow or alleviate the extra special meeting. Because
Yes.
we may already have one at the end, and then also there will be extras when we do the actual interviews the week of the 31st, according to
Correct.
this.
Yes, there would be no
So-
special meeting for that if we do the first option.
Right.
Yes, does someone want to make a real motion?
There we go.
I would move to accept the superintendent search timeline as submitted and with the one that goes sooner the better, I think, earlier number.
Works for me,
Option
Brandon.
Was that a motion?
Yes,
Okay.
it was.
I will second the motion for option A.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Motion passes 7-0.
Thank you. And now we are at item 11A, future board calendar dates. Our next regular board meeting will be here, February 26th at 6 PM. We will have one regular board meeting in March, Wednesday, March 12th, here at 6 PM. Wednesday, April 9th at 6 PM will be our regular meeting here, followed by April 23rd at 6 PM here at Mary Herbert Education Center. And then on Wednesday, April 30th at 5 PM, we will have our end-of-year staff recognition at White Auditorium. I will take a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
Motion passes 7-0.